There are two basic types of visual warnings in the Wheelhouse 2 charting program. One is the red lettering that appears in the middle of the screen here. If I press, for example, numlock, this is to tell the pilot that certain keys on the laptop have been remapped from alpha characters to numerical characters, such as U, which is for zoom up, is now remapped to the number 4. So that's a type of warning that appears there. Keyboard input focus and mouse input focus are indicated here. If the pilot uses a keyboard or mouse now, the Wheelhouse 2 charting program will not see it. So that's a warning. Another type of warning that can appear here is no Raven GPS position. That can happen when communication with SYN client is somehow stopped. If that were to be the case, this status word here would be no data. So anyway, the red lettering in the middle of the screen is one type of visual warning. Then the other type of visual warning is right here. This is the GPS operational status word. And right now it says DGPS. This is indicating that the position is a differential GPS position, and that would indicate also that the pilot is using a Raven Invicta submeter GPS receiver. And then if you press F3 to find out what the long description of this status word is, I'll do that right now. You can see right here that the long description of DGPS is 3D differential GPS navigation using 6 satellites. Now, there are other things that can be presented here in this status word. You can have no comm, and if you then pressed F3, the long description would be no response from DGPS unit. You can also have here no pause, which would mean that the GPS receiver is in communication with the laptop computer, but it has not computed a position yet. And then you could also have warning here. And if you had warning here, then you press F3. There's a number of things that you might find there. One is COM1 not initialized, which is a hardware problem with the communication port that's talking to the GPS receiver. You might find beacon ID being received is not in the approved list. You might find the GPS engine is not in differential mode. You might find high HDOP, GDOP, so forth. So there's a number of things you can find on the F3 screen if the status word is warning. Then if you're not using a pilot system GPS, whether it's a Raven GPS or a third-party WASP GPS receiver, if instead you're using the ship's GPS, then this word right here is going to can have different values. One, it can have ship DGPS accuracy unknown. If you're using the ship's GPS, you're always going to have accuracy unknown. If you're using a WASP receiver, you're always going to have accuracy unknown here. It's only if you're using the Raven beacon-corrected submeter GPS receiver that you'll just have DGPS, because the integrity of that is closely monitored. And then you could have here, if you're using the ship's GPS, you could have ship GPS as opposed to ship DGPS. It'll tell you whether the ship's GPS receiver is in differential or not. And then finally here, if you're using the ship's GPS, you could have no ship GPS. There's another small annotation that gets put in this window. It's the RAIM in use flag. And you can look in the operation manual and get some more information about the RAIM in use flag if you're interested. There are certain status words that can appear here that don't have anything to do with the position source, whether it's from a pilot system GPS or whether it's from the ship's GPS. And those statuses are 1, no data, and this is and if you looked on F3, it would say SYN client not responding. Another one would be no GPS. And if you looked on the F3, you would see no local vessel record has been received from SYN client in more than 2.5 seconds. You might see send error, SENDERR, which in F3 would say error processing SYN client message. I don't think we've seen any of those in quite some time, but we in the early days we had that. And then finally, you might see right here, you might see BPI battery. In the case that the BPI battery, the Bluetooth pilot interface battery, is below 10%. So that's it for visual alarms, visual warnings, and we'll talk about the audible warnings in another video.